Imagine walking into a room and seeing the one person who shattered your heart 4 years ago. Now imagine your 6-year-old daughter asking, "Mommy, is that her?" Evelyn Hart, Millionaire CEO, thought she had buried her past, but some loves refuse to stay buried. Before we dive into this emotional journey, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The community center doors opened with a creak that seemed to echo through my chest. I adjusted my Hermes blazer and checked my Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. 2:47 p.m. Perfect timing for the sponsorship meeting at Riverside Community Center. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the steering wheel of my Tesla, and I cursed myself for the weakness. Evelyn Hart didn't do nervous. Evelyn Hart controlled boardrooms, commanded respect, and never let emotions interfere with business. But today felt different. Today felt like walking into a minefield blindfolded. Mia skipped beside me as we approached the weathered brick building, her tiny hand warm and trusting in mine. At 6 years old, she had my dark hair, but none of my carefully constructed walls. She saw the world as a place full of possibilities, where every stranger was a potential friend, and every day held magic. "Mommy, why are we here again?" she asked, her voice bright with curiosity as she tugged on my designer skirt. "Business, sweetheart. Mommy's company is going to help kids learn art." The words felt hollow in my mouth. This wasn't just business. This was penance. This was me trying to fill the void I'd created when I chose success over soul. The hallway smelled like tempera paint and childhood dreams, mixed with the faint scent of industrial cleaner and hope. My Louboutin heels clicked against worn linoleum that had seen decades of small feet running toward creativity. Children's artwork lined the walls. Handprint turkeys, crayon rainbows, finger-painted masterpieces that spoke of uninhibited joy. I remembered being that free once. Before I learned that vulnerability was weakness, before I built walls so high that even love couldn't scale them. "Ms. Hart?" A cheerful voice interrupted my thoughts. "I'm Director Martinez. Thank you so much for considering our little program." He was a kind-faced man in his 50s, with paint stains on his shirt and genuine warmth in his eyes. The kind of person who believed in second chances and the transformative power of art. "Of course," I replied, slipping into my professional persona like armor. "Hart Industries is committed to community investment." We followed him down the corridor toward the art room, and with each step, my heart hammered harder against my ribs. Through the glass window, I could see children hunched over easels, their faces serious with concentration, tongues poking out in determination. And then I saw her, Ava Collins. 4 years older, hair shorter and streaked with premature silver, wearing a paint-splattered apron over faded jeans. Still breathtaking. Still the woman who haunted my dreams and made me question every choice I'd made since the day I walked away. My breath caught in my throat like a physical thing. The world tilted on its axis, and for a moment, I was 28 again, standing in our tiny apartment, watching her paint by morning light while I pretended to read emails. She was crouched beside a little boy with Down syndrome, guiding his brush with infinite patience. Her voice was soft and encouraging, the same voice that once whispered, "I love you," in the darkness of our shared bed. The same voice that had screamed "coward" the night I destroyed everything. "This is our art teacher, Ava Collins," Director Martinez said with obvious pride. "She's transformed our program. The children absolutely adore her." Of course they did. Ava had always had that effect on people. She made them feel seen, valued, worthy of beauty. "Ava, meet Evelyn Hart from Hart Industries." Ava looked up slowly, and our eyes met across 4 years of silence, regret, and unfinished conversations. Time stopped. The children's chatter faded to white noise. The world narrowed to just her green eyes, wide with shock and something that might have been pain. The paintbrush slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor like a gunshot in the sudden silence. "Evelyn." My name on her lips was barely a whisper, but it hit me like a physical blow. She said it like a prayer, like a curse, like the name of someone who had died. I forced my CEO mask into place, the one that had served me well in hostile takeovers and brutal negotiations. "Ms. Collins." The formality felt like glass in my mouth. This was Ava, who had seen me cry over failed code, who had held my hair back when I was sick with stress, who had believed in my dreams when I couldn't afford to believe in them myself. The children continued painting, oblivious to the earthquake happening between their beloved teacher and the woman in the expensive suit. Their innocence was a stark contrast to the weight of history pressing down on us like a physical thing. Mia tugged my hand, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Mommy, you look funny, like when you see scary movies." Ava's eyes dropped to Mia, and something shifted in her expression. Softness, wonder, pain so raw it made my chest ache. I watched her take in my daughter's dark hair, her curious eyes, the way she held herself with unconscious confidence. "This is my daughter Mia," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Hi." Mia waved enthusiastically, completely unaware of the undercurrents swirling around her. "I like your paintings. They're pretty like you." A ghost of a smile crossed Ava's face, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's very kind." Her voice was different now, softer around the edges, worn smooth by years of talking to children, of building them up instead of tearing them down. It was the voice of someone who had learned to heal by helping others heal. Director Martinez launched into his presentation about funding needs, his enthusiasm infectious as he gestured toward colorful displays of student work. But I couldn't focus. My attention was entirely consumed by Ava as she moved around the room, helping students, her voice gentle and encouraging. She wore her hair shorter now, just brushing her shoulders, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But she was still beautiful in that effortless way that had first caught my attention 7 years ago. Still the woman who could make me forget about profit margins and quarterly reports with just a smile. The art program serves 50 children from low-income families. Director Martinez continued, his voice full of passion. Ms. Collins has transformed their creativity, their confidence, their belief in themselves. "Excuse me." Ava's voice cut through his speech like a blade. "I need some air." She walked past me, close enough that I caught her familiar scent. Lavender and turpentine, and something indefinably her, close enough to see her hands trembling, to notice the way she held herself like someone trying not to break apart. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like finality. Mia watched her go with those two perceptive eyes that missed nothing. "Mommy, why did the pretty teacher look sad when she saw you?" My throat closed. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough? That sometimes you destroy the best thing in your life because you're terrified of losing control? That sometimes you're such a coward that you choose loneliness over the risk of being vulnerable? I don't know, baby. But I did know. I knew exactly why Ava looked like I'd just ripped her heart out all over again. Because 4 years ago, that's exactly what I did. The meeting continued without Ava, but her absence filled the room like smoke. I signed the sponsorship agreement with mechanical precision, my hand steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. The numbers on the check blurred as I wrote them. Twice the requested amount, as if money could somehow atone for the damage I'd done. "This is incredibly generous, Ms. Hart." Director Martinez beamed, his eyes lighting up as he processed the figure. "The children will be absolutely thrilled. This funding will allow us to expand our programs, maybe even hire additional staff." I nodded absently, my mind replaying the shock in Ava's eyes, the way her face had gone pale when she saw me. 4 years, and I could still read her like a book I'd memorized by heart. Mia had wandered away from the business discussion, drawn like a magnet to Ava's desk in the corner of the room. She stood on her tiptoes, studying the sketches scattered across its surface with the intense concentration only children possessed. "Mommy, look!" she called out, her voice bright with discovery. "She draws like the lady in your bedroom." My blood turned to ice. Every muscle in my body went rigid. "What lady, sweetheart?" Director Martinez looked confused, his pen hovering over the contract as he sensed the sudden shift in atmosphere. "The one in the picture you keep in your drawer." Mia continued innocently, completely unaware of the bomb she'd just detonated. "The one that makes you cry sometimes when you think I'm sleeping." The silence stretched like a taut wire. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that boardrooms and hostile takeovers had never made me feel. My carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and my 6-year-old daughter was the one holding the sledgehammer. Mia, come here, please. My voice was steadier than I had any right to expect. She bounded over, clutching one of Ava's sketches, a charcoal drawing of hands reaching toward light, delicate and haunting, and so perfectly Ava that it made my chest ache. Can we take this home? It's beautiful. We can't take Ms. Collins's artwork, baby. I gently extracted the sketch from her small fingers, trying not to notice how the charcoal smudged under my touch. But she draws just like the lady you love. The words hit like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Out of the mouths of babes. How had I thought I was being subtle? How had I convinced myself that my grief was invisible? Director Martinez cleared his throat awkwardly, shuffling papers with unnecessary vigor. Perhaps we should... Is that her? Mia's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through everything else like a knife through silk. I knelt to her level, my designer skirt pooling around me on the paint-stained floor. Is that who, sweetheart? The lady from the story you never finish. Her dark eyes, so much like mine, searched my face with uncomfortable intensity. The one who made you happy before I was born. The one who went away and made you sad. My chest tightened until breathing became a conscious effort. I'd been so careful, so controlled. I'd thought I'd hidden the tears, the sleepless nights, the way I sometimes stood in front of her old apartment building like a ghost haunting the scene of its own death. But children see everything, don't they? They see the tears you think you've hidden, the photographs you thought were secret, the way you stop breathing when certain songs play on the radio. Mia. It is her, isn't it? Her small hand touched my cheek with devastating gentleness. That's why you look scared and happy and sad all at the same time. Like when you watch those movies where people find each other again. Through the window, I could see Ava in the courtyard, arms wrapped around herself like armor, staring at nothing. Even from here, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like someone trying not to shatter into a million pieces. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if the years had worn her down to her essential elements, still beautiful, still graceful, but fragile in a way that made me want to wrap her in bubble wrap and promises I had no right to make. Mommy? Mia's voice pulled me back to the present. Are you going to cry? No, baby, Mommy's fine. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I wasn't fine. I was drowning in memories of Sunday mornings in bed, of Ava's laugh echoing through our tiny kitchen, of the way she used to paint while I worked late, leaving little love notes in the margins of my contracts. I was suffocating under the weight of 4 years of regret and the knowledge that I'd thrown away the best thing that had ever happened to me. Can we stay and watch her teach? Mia asked, her eyes bright with hope. Please? I want to learn to paint like her. I want to make beautiful things too. Before I could answer, Ava returned. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined, and she'd composed herself with the kind of practiced control I recognized, because I'd perfected it myself. She'd built walls, just like I had. The difference was, hers were to keep me out, while mine were to keep everyone out. I apologize for my abrupt departure, she said to Director Martinez, pointedly not looking at me. Her voice was professional, distant, like we were strangers instead of two people who had once planned a future together. Shall we continue with the tour? But Mia had other plans. She walked straight to Ava with the fearless confidence that only children possessed, completely immune to adult awkwardness and unspoken history. Ms. Collins, will you teach me to paint? She asked, looking up at Ava with those enormous dark eyes that had been melting hearts since the day she was born. Mommy says I'm good at art, but I want to be great like you. Ava's carefully constructed composure cracked like ice under pressure. She knelt down, meeting Mia at eye level, and I saw her hands tremble slightly as she reached out to touch my daughter's hair. What's your favorite thing to draw, sweetheart? Families, Mia said without hesitation, her voice matter-of-fact in the way only children could manage. But mine is always missing someone. There's me and Mommy, but there's supposed to be someone else, someone who makes Mommy smile the way she does in the old pictures. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Ava's eyes found mine over Mia's head, and for a moment, the years fell away. I saw the woman who used to trace constellations on my back, who believed in forever when I was too scared to believe in tomorrow, who had loved me with a fierce intensity that had terrified me into running. Maybe, Ava said softly, her voice thick with emotion. We can work on that together. The words hung in the air like a promise, like a question, like a lifeline thrown across 4 years of silence. Director Martinez excused himself, mumbling something about checking on other classes, leaving the 3 of us alone in a room full of children's dreams and broken adult hearts. I should go, I said, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. Should you? Ava stood slowly, never breaking eye contact. Or are you going to run away again? The accusation hit its mark. I felt Mia's curious gaze bouncing between us, trying to decode the adult conversation happening in subtext and loaded silences. I'm not running. Aren't you? Because that's what you do, Evelyn. When things get complicated, when emotions get messy, you run. That's not fair. Fair? Ava's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing at Mia and forcing her tone back to neutral. You want to talk about fair? Mia tugged on my sleeve, her small voice cutting through the tension. Mommy, why does Ms. Collins sound angry? Did you do something bad? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Had I done something bad? I'd broken the heart of the woman I loved, destroyed the best relationship of my life, and spent 4 years convincing myself it was for the greater good. Yeah, I'd done something bad. 3 days later, I found myself back at the community center, my hands gripping the steering wheel of my Tesla, like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I told myself it was to check on the sponsorship implementation, to ensure the funds were being properly allocated. I told myself it had nothing to do with the way Ava's voice had softened when she spoke to Mia, or the way my daughter hadn't stopped talking about the pretty teacher since our visit. I was lying to myself, and I'd gotten very good at that over the years. The art room buzzed with afternoon energy when I arrived. Children clustered around easels like flowers turning toward the sun, their faces serious with concentration, completely absorbed in their creative worlds. The air smelled of tempera paint and possibility, mixed with the faint scent of apple juice and graham crackers from snack time. And there was Ava, moving between them like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of creativity. She wore a flowing bohemian skirt today, paint-stained and beautiful, paired with a simple white t-shirt that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun secured with what looked like a paintbrush, and she had a streak of cerulean blue across her left cheekbone. She looked exactly like the woman I fell in love with 7 years ago. Artistic, passionate, completely in her element. The sight of her hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making my knees weak. Mommy! Mia's voice cut through my reverie like a knife through silk. You came. Ms. Collins is teaching us about choices today. I approached cautiously, my heels clicking against the paint-splattered floor. On the whiteboard, Ava had written in her distinctive handwriting, "Art is about choices. Every brushstroke is a decision. Every color tells a story. What story will you tell today?" The words felt like a direct challenge, a gauntlet thrown down between us. Today, Ava announced to the class, her voice carrying easily across the room, we're painting about difficult choices. Think about a time when you had to choose between 2 important things. Maybe you had to choose between staying up late or getting enough sleep. Maybe you had to choose between playing with friends or helping family. Life is full of choices, and sometimes they're not easy. Her eyes met mine across the room, and the message was crystal clear. This wasn't just an art lesson. It was a conversation we'd never had, played out in metaphor and paint. I watched as children bent over their papers, lost in their own interpretations of difficult choices. A little girl painted 2 ice cream cones, clearly torn between flavors. A boy created a scene of a child standing between a playground and a house, representing the choice between fun and responsibility. And Mia, my brilliant, perceptive daughter, painted 2 stick figures reaching toward each other across a dark chasm, with a smaller figure standing in the middle, arms outstretched toward both. Interesting subject matter, I said, approaching Ava's desk where she was grading papers from an earlier class. She didn't look up, her red pen moving across a child's drawing with careful attention. Children understand more than adults give them credit for. They see the world in simple terms: love, fear, joy, sadness. They haven't learned yet how to complicate things unnecessarily. And what exactly are you teaching them to understand? Now she looked at me, and her green eyes were sharp as broken glass, filled with 4 years of accumulated hurt and anger. That some choices leave scars. That some people choose success over love. That some people are cowards who run when things get difficult. The words hit their target with surgical precision. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the one that had become my constant companion since the day I walked away from her. Ava, don't. She stood abruptly, paper scattering to the floor like autumn leaves. Don't you dare say my name like that. Like you have the right. Like you didn't forfeit that privilege 4 years ago. Several children looked up from their paintings, sensing the tension crackling between us like electricity before a storm. Ava forced a bright smile for them, but I could see her hands shaking as she gathered the fallen papers. Can we talk privately? I asked, my voice low and urgent. We have nothing to talk about. We have everything to talk about. No, Evelyn. My name on her lips was like acid. We had everything to talk about 4 years ago. You chose not to. You chose to walk away instead of fighting for us. You chose your precious company over the woman who loved you more than her own life. The accusation hung between us like a sword, sharp and unforgiving. Around us, children continued painting, their innocent chatter a stark contrast to the adult drama unfolding in their midst. That's not... Ms. Collins, a small voice interrupted our standoff. Look what I made. Mia appeared beside us, holding her painting with pride. In her innocent artwork, 2 figures stood on opposite sides of a bridge, one in a sharp business suit, one in flowing artist's clothes. Between them, a small figure reached toward both, tears streaming down her face. It's about choosing between staying and going, Mia explained with the matter-of-fact tone that only children could manage. The lady in the pretty dress has to choose between love and work, but the little girl doesn't understand why she can't have both. Ava's breath caught audibly. She knelt beside Mia, her voice gentle despite the storm raging in her eyes. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Tell me about the little girl. She's sad because the grown-ups are making it complicated. She thinks love should be enough to keep people together. She doesn't understand why the lady in the suit looks so scared. And what do you think the lady is scared of? Mia considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher. Maybe she's scared of being happy. Sometimes grown-ups are scared of good things because they think they don't deserve them. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. My 6-year-old daughter had just diagnosed my deepest fear with the clarity that only innocence could provide. Ava's eyes filled with tears as she studied the painting. You're very wise, little one. Sometimes grown-ups do make things more complicated than they need to be, but love is simple, right? Mia asked, her voice hopeful. You love someone, they love you back, and you stay together forever. That's how it works in the good stories. Yes, Ava whispered, looking directly at me over Mia's head. It should be that simple. The weight of my choices pressed down on me like a physical thing. 4 years ago, I'd convinced myself I was protecting her, protecting us. The company was struggling, the pressure was crushing, and I couldn't bear the thought of dragging her down with me into the chaos of my ambition. So I'd chosen the coward's way out. I'd picked a fight, said terrible things, made her believe I didn't love her enough to fight for us. I'd convinced myself that a clean break was kinder than a slow destruction. I'd been wrong about everything. Ms. Collins, a little boy called out from across the room. My painting is about choosing between my mom and dad. They don't live together anymore, and I have to pick who to spend weekends with. Ava wiped her eyes quickly and went to help him, leaving me standing there with Mia and the weight of my regrets. I watched her comfort a child whose world had been split in two by adult choices, and I realized she'd been doing this for 4 years, helping others heal while her own wounds stayed fresh and bleeding. Mommy. Mia tugged my sleeve, her voice small and uncertain. Why does Ms. Collins look at you like she's remembering something that hurts? Because she is, baby. Because we both are. Because some mistakes echo through years, creating ripples that touch everything and everyone around them. I don't know, sweetheart, but I did know. And as I watched Ava guide young hands across paper, teaching them that art could transform pain into beauty, I knew I had to find the courage I'd lacked 4 years ago. Some choices deserve a second chance. Some love is worth fighting for, even if you're terrified of being happy. That night, sleep eluded me like a ghost I couldn't quite catch. I stood in my penthouse office at 2 a.m., city lights blinking below like fallen stars, and let myself remember what I'd spent 4 years trying to forget. The memories came in waves, each one more painful than the last, but I forced myself to sit with them, to feel every sharp edge of what I'd lost. 7 years ago, I was nobody. A struggling entrepreneur with a failing tech startup, more debt than sense, and a stubborn refusal to give up on a dream that everyone else called impossible. I lived in a cramped studio apartment above grind coffee, surviving on ramen noodles, determination, and the kind of desperate hope that only comes when you have nothing left to lose. That's where I met her. Ava was the barista who drew hearts in my coffee foam and asked about my day like she actually cared about the answer. She had paint under her fingernails and dreams bigger than the small town she'd escaped, and when she smiled, the whole world felt possible. She wore vintage band t-shirts and flowing skirts, and she moved through the coffee shop like she was dancing to music only she could hear. "You look like you need more than caffeine," she said one particularly brutal Tuesday when I'd been coding for 36 hours straight and my eyes felt like sandpaper. "I need a miracle," I'd replied, my voice hoarse from exhaustion and too much coffee. "Fresh out of miracles. But I make a mean grilled cheese, and I get off in 20 minutes. That grilled cheese led to dinner at a hole-in-the-wall diner where the coffee was terrible, but the conversation was electric. Dinner led to walks through the city, where she showed me hidden murals and secret gardens I'd never noticed despite living there for 3 years. Walks led to her tiny apartment filled with canvases and hope, where she painted by moonlight and made me believe in magic again. And hope led to love, the kind that changes your DNA, that rewrites your understanding of what it means to be alive, that makes you believe in forever, even when you've never believed in anything before. For 3 years, we built a life together in that cramped space above the coffee shop. She painted while I coded, her easel set up by the window to catch the morning light. She believed in my dreams when I'd given up on them myself, celebrating every small victory like it was the Nobel Prize, and holding me through panic attacks when the failures felt insurmountable. "We're going to make it," she'd whisper in the dark, her fingers tracing patterns on my back that felt like promises. "Both of us. Together. Your company is going to change the world, and my art is going to touch people's souls, and we're going to do it all side by side." And we almost did. Heart Industries finally took off in year 4. Investors noticed. Contracts materialized. Success was within reach, but it came with a price that felt like selling my soul. 18-hour days became 20-hour days. Constant travel. Pressure that felt like drowning in an ocean of expectations and demands. "You're disappearing," Ava said one night, finding me still at my laptop at 3 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and the detritus of another sleepless night. "This is temporary," I'd insisted, not looking up from the screen. "Once we're stable, once we hit our targets, when, Evelyn? When will it be enough? When will you have made enough money, gained enough success, proven yourself enough times that you can come back to us?" I didn't have an answer. I was terrified that if I stopped running, stopped pushing, everything would collapse. The company, my future, our future. I was convinced that success was a house of cards that would tumble if I breathed wrong, but the real terror was deeper than that. Buried so far down I could barely acknowledge it even to myself. I was terrified that I wasn't enough. That a girl from nowhere with nothing to offer couldn't possibly deserve someone as pure and talented and beautiful as Ava Collins. So when the pressure peaked, when investors demanded more and competitors circled like sharks, when every day felt like a battle for survival, I made the worst decision of my life. I pushed her away. "This isn't working," I'd said one night, the words like acid in my throat, burning everything they touched. "What isn't working?" She'd looked up from her easel, paintbrush suspended in midair, confusion written across her face. "Us. This. I need to focus on the company. So we'll figure it out together. We always do. We're a team, remember? No, Ava. I need to do this alone." The look on her face still haunts me. Confusion melting into hurt. Hurt crystallizing into disbelief. disbelief hardening into something that looked like the death of hope. "You're scared," she'd said quietly, setting down her brush with careful precision. "You're scared of success, so you're sabotaging the best thing in your life. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward." She was right. But I was too proud, too terrified to admit it. Instead, I doubled down on the cruelty, convinced that a clean break was kinder than a slow destruction. "Maybe you should find someone who has time for your dreams," I'd said, knowing it would destroy her, hating myself even as the words left my mouth. "Maybe I should find someone who isn't afraid of their own happiness." She'd shot back, tears streaming down her face. She left that night, packed her easel, her paints, her light, and walked out of my life like she'd never been there at all. Left me in an apartment that suddenly felt like a mausoleum, surrounded by the ghosts of what we'd built together. I threw myself into work with the desperation of someone trying to outrun their own heart. Heart industries exploded into success. I became the woman I'd dreamed of being, powerful, wealthy, untouchable. I made Forbes' 30 under 30 list. I bought the penthouse, the cars, the life I'd always thought I wanted, but I never stopped loving her, never stopped regretting the choice that saved my company and destroyed my soul, never stopped wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to choose love over fear. A soft knock interrupted my memories. Mia stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant, her dark hair mussed from sleep. "Mommy, you're sad again." I opened my arms and she climbed into my lap, warm and solid and real. "Just thinking, baby. About the pretty teacher, about choices I made a long time ago." "Bad choices? The worst choice." She was quiet for a moment, processing this with the seriousness that only children could bring to adult problems. "Can you fix it?" "I don't know if she'll let me try." She looks at you like she wants to. Like she's waiting for you to say something important. Out of the mouths of babes. "What do you think I should say?" "Sorry. And that you love her. And that you won't be scared anymore." If only it were that simple. But maybe, just maybe, it was. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" Mia considered this with the gravity of a judge. "She looks sad too, Mommy. Maybe she needs someone to say sorry to her as much as you need to say it." I held my daughter close, breathing in her innocence and wisdom, and made a decision that terrified me more than any business deal ever had. Tomorrow, I was going to try to fix the worst mistake of my life, even if it killed me. The next afternoon, I picked Mia up from her regular school and drove straight to the community center, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I told myself it was because she'd begged to attend Ava's art class again, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that only children could muster for simple pleasures. I told myself it had nothing to do with the sleepless night I'd spent rehearsing apologies that would never be adequate for the damage I'd done. I was still lying to myself, but the lies were getting thinner, more transparent, like tissue paper in the rain. "Remember, sweetheart, we're just visiting," I said, as we walked through the familiar hallways that smelled of tempera paint and childhood dreams. "Ms. Collins might be busy with other students." "She won't be too busy for us," Mia said, with the absolute certainty that only 6-year-olds possessed. "She likes us. I can tell by the way she smiles when she sees you, even when she's trying to look angry." The art room was quieter today. Only a handful of children working on individual projects, their heads bent in concentration over papers covered in swirls of color and imagination. Soft classical music played from a small speaker in the corner, creating an atmosphere of peaceful creativity that felt like stepping into another world. Ava sat at a small table with a girl who couldn't have been more than 4, helping her mix colors on a paper plate palette. The little girl had Down syndrome, and Ava's patience with her was infinite, her voice gentle and encouraging as she guided tiny fingers around a paintbrush. "The secret," Ava was saying, her voice soft and musical, "is to add just a tiny bit of yellow to make the green happier. See how it changes? Colors are like feelings. They can be sad or happy or angry, and we get to choose which ones we want to use." She looked up as we entered, and I saw the war in her eyes, the part that wanted to smile fighting with the part that remembered how to protect herself from further hurt. It was like watching someone try to decide between reaching for something beautiful and pulling their hand back from a flame. "Mia!" The little girl at the table waved enthusiastically, paint-covered fingers leaving colorful smudges in the air. Look what I made. It's a rainbow, but Ms. Collins says it doesn't have to have all the regular colors. Mia bounded over to admire the painting, her enthusiasm genuine and infectious. It's beautiful. I love how you made purple and orange next to each other. They look like they're dancing. I approached Ava cautiously, feeling like I was walking through a minefield where one wrong step could destroy everything. I hope it's okay that we came by. Mia's been talking about your class nonstop since our last visit. Of course. Ava's voice was carefully neutral, professionally polite in a way that felt like a knife between my ribs. Children are always welcome here. This is their space. And their mothers? She looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw the exhaustion in her face. Not just physical tiredness, but the bone-deep weariness that comes from carrying hurt for too long. From building walls that take constant energy to maintain. That depends on the mother. Before I could respond, Mia had claimed a spot at the table and was already reaching for brushes with the confidence of someone who belonged everywhere she went. Ms. Collins, can you teach me to paint families? Real ones, not just stick figures? Ava settled beside her, and I watched her face soften in a way that made my chest ache. This was the Ava I remembered, gentle, nurturing, someone who saw the potential in every person she met. What makes a family real, sweetheart? Mia considered this question with the seriousness of a philosopher contemplating the meaning of existence. Love. And staying together, even when things get hard. And choosing each other every day, even when you're scared or angry or sad. Ava's hand stilled on the paint palette, her breath catching audibly. That's very wise, little one. Where did you learn that? My mommy taught me that. She says love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make over and over, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, a flush of embarrassment, and something that might have been pride. When had I said that? And why was my 6-year-old daughter apparently wiser than I'd been at 32, when I'd let fear make my choices for me? What kind of family do you want to paint? Ava asked, her voice carefully controlled, but I could hear the emotion underneath, like a river running beneath ice. Mia considered this seriously, her small face scrunched in concentration. The kind where nobody has to choose between love and work, where the mommy doesn't cry when she thinks I'm sleeping. Where there's someone to help make pancakes on Sunday mornings and read bedtime stories and teach me how to braid my hair properly. My throat closed. I'd thought I'd been so careful, so controlled. I'd believed I was protecting her from my grief, my regrets, my midnight tears. But children see everything, don't they? They see the tears you think you've hidden, the photographs you thought were secret, the way you sometimes stand at windows looking at nothing, lost in memories of what used to be. Ava's eyes found mine across the table, and in them I saw recognition. She remembered Sunday morning pancakes, remembered being the someone who helped with everything, remembered the life we'd built before I tore it down with my own hands. That sounds like a beautiful family, Ava said softly, her voice thick with emotion she was trying to hide. As Mia painted, I watched Ava guide her small hands with the same patience and gentleness she'd once shown me when I was struggling with impossible decisions and impossible dreams. The same woman who had held me through panic attacks and celebrated every small victory like it was the Nobel Prize. She's remarkable, Ava said quietly, not looking at me, her attention focused on Mia's careful brushstrokes. She gets that from her father, I said, then immediately regretted the words. Why had I said that? What was I trying to prove? Does she? There was something sharp in Ava's voice, an edge that cut through the careful politeness. And where is he? This remarkable father? He was never in the picture. It was just me and a sperm donor and a lot of hope for the future. Ava's brush paused mid-stroke, her green eyes widening slightly. You always said you wanted children. I wanted children with you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Raw and honest, and completely unfiltered. Ava's face went very still, like she was holding her breath, afraid that any movement might shatter the moment. Evelyn. Look. Mia held up her painting triumphantly, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around her. It's perfect. On the paper, 3 figures stood in a kitchen bathed in golden morning light. A woman in a business suit, a woman with paint-covered hands and flowing hair, and a small girl between them. All 3 were smiling. All 3 were reaching toward each other, their hands almost touching. creating a circle of connection and love. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I managed, my voice hoarse with emotion. "It's my wish," Mia explained with the matter-of-fact tone that only children could manage when discussing magic, "for you to stop being sad all the time. For Ms. Collins to stop looking lonely when she thinks nobody's watching. For us to be a real family, like the ones in the good stories." Ava's eyes filled with tears that she tried desperately to blink away. She stood abruptly, walking to the window where afternoon light streamed through glass painted with children's handprints. "Mia, baby, why don't you clean up your brushes?" I suggested gently. I followed Ava to the window, where she stood with her arms wrapped around herself like armor, staring out at the courtyard where other children played. "She doesn't know," I said quietly, "about us. About what we were to each other, doesn't she?" Ava's voice was thick with tears she refused to let fall, because that painting looks like she knows exactly what she wants, and it looks like she's not the only one. The accusation hung between us like a bridge I was afraid to cross. That evening, after Mia was asleep, I found myself standing outside Ava's apartment building, like a ghost haunting the scene of its own death. The same red brick building where she'd lived 7 years ago, though I knew she'd moved to a different unit after I'd destroyed everything we'd built together. The building looked smaller somehow, shabbier, like the years had worn it down the same way they'd worn down my hope. I'd been sitting in my car for an hour, gathering courage I should have found 4 years ago, watching windows light up as people settled into their evening routines. Normal people with normal lives who probably didn't spend their nights wrestling with regrets that felt like physical weight. Finally, when the streetlights flickered on and my hands had stopped shaking, I climbed the stairs to 3B and knocked. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot, final and irreversible. Ava opened the door in paint-splattered pajamas, her hair damp from a shower, smelling like lavender soap and possibility. She looked young and vulnerable, and so beautiful it hurt to breathe. For a moment, we just stared at each other, suspended between past and possibility, between what was and what might still be. "Evelyn? How did you—" "I never forgot your address. Any of them." The admission felt like stripping naked in public. I drive by sometimes, when I can't sleep. When the guilt gets too heavy. She stood in the doorway, not inviting me in, not closing the door, suspended between welcome and rejection, between forgiveness and self-preservation. "It's late." "I know. I couldn't sleep. I haven't slept properly in 4 years. Another admission that cost me everything. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face the night I walked away. That's not my problem anymore, isn't it?" I stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough to smell her familiar scent. "Because I think you haven't been sleeping either. I think you've been carrying this hurt as long as I have, and it's been eating you alive from the inside out." Her composure cracked slightly, like ice under pressure. "What do you want, Evelyn? Why are you here, really? To have the conversation we should have had 4 years ago. To tell you the truth instead of the lies I used to push you away. To stop being a coward and finally fight for what I should have fought for then." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Then she stepped aside, her voice barely above a whisper. 5 minutes. Her apartment was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like what I'd prepared for. Walls covered in paintings, easels in every corner, the scent of turpentine and dreams hanging in the air like incense. But it was smaller than before, more cramped, like she'd been making herself smaller ever since I left, like she'd been shrinking to fit the space I'd left behind. The paintings on the walls were different too, darker, more abstract. Pain transformed into art, but pain nonetheless. "You said you wanted to tell me the truth," she said, arms crossed defensively, standing as far away from me as the small space would allow. I took a deep breath, tasting fear and hope in equal measure. I was terrified. Not of failure. I'd been failing for years. I was terrified of success, of having everything I'd ever wanted and not being worthy of it. "So you threw it away." "I threw us away because I was convinced I'd ruin you eventually." Better to hurt you cleanly than to drag you down with me into the chaos of my ambition. That wasn't your choice to make. I know that now. I knew it then. But I was too scared to admit it, too proud to ask for help. She moved to the window, looking out at the city lights that twinkled like fallen stars. Do you know what the worst part was? Not the breakup. Not even the cruel things you said to make me leave. It was realizing that after 3 years together, you didn't trust me enough to let me choose for myself. The words hit like physical blows, each one finding its mark with surgical precision. Ava, you decided I was too weak to handle your pressure, too fragile to weather your storms, too naive to understand what success would cost. You made that choice for both of us, and you didn't even have the decency to ask what I wanted. You're right. I know I'm right. She turned to face me, and her eyes blazed with 4 years of suppressed anger, 4 years of hurt that had crystallized into something sharp and unforgiving. I would have chosen you, Evelyn, every single day, through every 18-hour workday, through every panic attack, through every moment of doubt and fear. I would have chosen you. Tears streamed down my face, hot and shameful and long overdue. I know. Do you? Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand what you destroyed when you walked away. Then tell me. She laughed bitterly, a sound like breaking glass. You want to know what you destroyed? I'll show you. She walked to a closet and pulled out a canvas, turning it toward me with shaking hands. It was a painting of us, me at my laptop, her curled beside me with a sketch pad. Our bodies touching at the shoulder, the hip, the ankle, connected even in our separate pursuits. The love between us was palpable, painted in warm golds and soft blues that made the whole scene glow with contentment. I painted this the week before you left. I was going to give it to you for our anniversary, along with a speech about how we were going to conquer the world together. My breath caught in my throat. Ava, there's more. She pulled out canvas after canvas, each one a window into the life we'd built and the future we'd planned. Us cooking dinner together, us dancing in our tiny living room, us sleeping tangled together like we were afraid to let go. I painted our whole relationship. Every moment I wanted to remember forever. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to see what love looks like when someone chooses it every day. When someone fights for it instead of running from it. When someone believes in forever even when the other person is too scared to believe in tomorrow. I stared at the paintings, our life in color and light and hope, and felt something break open in my chest. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. I was a coward. Yes, you were. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes. Her voice broke on the word. You did. We stood in silence, surrounded by the ghosts of what we'd been, what we'd lost, what we might still save if we were brave enough to try. Why did you keep them? I asked finally. Because I'm an idiot too. Because even after you broke my heart into 1,000,000 pieces, I couldn't let go of what we had. Because some part of me kept hoping you'd come back and fight for us the way I would have fought for you, Ava. I don't. She held up a hand, tears streaming down her face. Don't say you love me. Don't say you're sorry. Don't make promises you might not keep when the pressure gets too much again. What if I mean them? What if you don't? What if success isn't enough and you need more? What if I'm still not worth fighting for when things get complicated? You are. You always were. You're worth everything. Prove it. How? She looked at me for a long moment, then walked to her easel where a half-finished painting waited. On it was a woman and child walking away from a figure in shadow, moving toward light. I started this the day you walked back into my life. It's called Second Chances. What does it mean? I don't know yet. That depends on you. I stepped closer, studying the painting with the intensity of someone trying to decode their own future. The figures were walking toward light, but the shadowed figure remained behind, reaching but not following, trapped by their own fear. I want to follow, I whispered. I want to step into the light with you and Mia. I want to stop being afraid of my own happiness. Then do it. Choose us. Choose love. Choose to fight instead of run. I choose you, Ava. I choose us. I choose to be brave enough to deserve you this time. 2 weeks passed in careful dance, each day a delicate negotiation between hope and self-preservation. I brought Mia to art class every afternoon, staying to help with supplies and setup, finding excuses to linger in Ava's presence like a moth drawn to flame. We spoke in careful pleasantries, but underneath the polite conversation, something was building. Hope, maybe, or the courage to try again. Mia, blissfully oblivious to adult complications, had appointed herself our personal Cupid with the determination of someone on a sacred mission. "Ms. Collins, did you know my mommy makes the best pancakes in the whole world?" she announced during class one afternoon, her voice carrying across the room with the confidence of a town crier. "Does she?" Ava glanced at me with something that might have been amusement, the first crack in her carefully maintained professional facade. "And she sings in the shower, really loud. Like she's performing for a big audience, and she talks to herself when she's working late, having whole conversations with her computer like it's a person." "Mia," I warned, heat rising in my cheeks like a teenager caught in an embarrassing moment. "And she keeps a picture of you in her nightstand drawer," Mia continued with the relentless honesty that only children possessed. "The one where you're laughing at the beach and your hair is blowing in the wind. She looks at it when she thinks I'm sleeping, and sometimes she cries a little bit." I wanted to disappear into the floor, to melt into the paint-stained linoleum, and escape the mortification of having my most private moments exposed by my 6-year-old daughter. Ava's eyebrows rose, and for the first time since I'd walked back into her life, I saw something that looked like genuine surprise. "Is that so? The one where you're wearing that blue dress and you look really happy. She touches it sometimes, like she's trying to remember what it felt like when you were together." "Mia Elizabeth Hart, that's enough." My voice was strangled, caught between embarrassment and the desperate need to maintain some shred of dignity. But Ava was smiling now, really smiling, for the first time since I'd walked back into her life. It was like watching the sun break through storm clouds, transforming everything it touched. "Well," she said, her voice soft with something that might have been wonder, "that's very interesting information." That evening, as I tucked Mia into bed, she grabbed my hand with the intensity of someone delivering crucial intelligence. "Mommy, are you going to ask Ms. Collins to be part of our family?" "It's complicated, sweetheart." The understatement of the century. "No, it's not." Her voice carried the absolute certainty that only children could muster when faced with adult overcomplications. "You love her. She loves you. I love both of you. That's not complicated. That's perfect." "How do you know she loves me?" "Because she looks at you the same way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. Like you're the most important thing in the world. Like she'd do anything to keep you safe and happy." The next morning, I made a decision that terrified me more than any hostile takeover or board meeting ever had. I called my assistant and cleared my entire schedule, something I hadn't done in 4 years. Then I drove to the community center with a proposal that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the future I was finally brave enough to fight for. I found Ava in the art room, preparing for the day's classes, arranging supplies with the methodical care of someone who found peace in routine. She looked up as I entered, and I saw the wariness in her eyes, the careful walls she'd built to protect herself from further disappointment. "No Mia today? She's at school. I came to see you. Just you." "Oh." The single word carried a world of uncertainty. I pulled out a folder and set it on her desk with hands that trembled slightly. "I have a proposition." Ava's face shuddered immediately, her defenses slamming into place. "If this is about money, if you think you can buy your way back into my life, it's not about money. It's about choices. It's about finally making the right one." She opened the folder cautiously, like she was defusing a bomb. Inside were architectural plans, budget projections, and a detailed proposal for a new community arts center. 3 times larger than the current space, with proper studios, exhibition areas, performance spaces, and funding for a full staff of professional artists and teachers. "What is this?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "It's what happens when someone chooses love over fear, when they decide to fight for what matters instead of running from it, when they finally understand that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." Ava stared at the plans, her fingers tracing the architectural drawings like she was trying to convince herself they were real. "Evelyn, This is millions of dollars. It's an investment in the future, in art, in children who deserve to dream big and have the resources to make those dreams come true, in second chances and the belief that it's never too late to choose love. And in us, if you'll let there be in us. She was quiet for a long time, studying the plans with the intensity of someone trying to decode their own future. The silence stretched between us like a bridge I was afraid to cross, afraid she might burn it down before I reached the other side. There's a catch, isn't there? There's always a catch. Yes. What is it? I took a deep breath, tasting fear and hope in equal measure. I want you to run it. Be the director. Build something beautiful and lasting that will touch lives for generations. But I also want you to let me be part of it. Not as a donor or a board member, but as someone who loves you, someone who wants to choose you every single day for the rest of her life. Ava's hands trembled as she turned the pages, studying budget projections and staffing plans and architectural renderings that looked like dreams made manifest. This is real? You're really offering this? As real as I can make it. As real as my love for you. As real as my regret for walking away. As real as my determination to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of a second chance. And if it doesn't work out between us, if we try and fail again, if you get scared and run when things get difficult, then you still get the Arts Center. No strings attached, no conditions, no way for me to take it back. But Ava, I don't think we'll fail. Not if we choose each other instead of our fears. Not if we fight for love instead of running from it. She looked up at me, and I saw the war in her eyes, hope battling with self-preservation, love fighting with the memory of betrayal. I'm scared, she whispered, the admission costing her everything. So am I. I'm terrified, but I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what if. I'm more scared of dying with regrets than I am of living with vulnerability. And Mia? Mia already considers you family. She's been planning our wedding since the day she met you, complete with detailed notes about flowers and cake flavors, and the exact shade of blue your dress should be. That startled a laugh out of Ava, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in 4 years. Our wedding? She has very specific ideas. Apparently, there need to be lots of sunflowers because they always face the light, just like love should. And the cake has to have 3 layers because we're going to be a family of 3. And there has to be dancing because that's how people celebrate when they choose each other. Ava stood and walked to the window, looking out at the courtyard where children played, their laughter echoing through the glass like music. 4 years ago, you said you needed to focus on your company. That love was a distraction you couldn't afford. 4 years ago, I was an idiot who thought success meant sacrifice. Now I know success means having someone to share it with. Now I understand that love isn't a distraction from life, it's the whole point of living. And if the pressure gets too much again, if the company demands more than you can give, if you have to choose between love and ambition, then we face it together. No more running, no more choosing fear over love, no more making decisions in isolation and calling it protection. She turned back to me, and I saw the moment she decided, the moment she chose to be brave, to risk her heart one more time, to believe in the possibility of forever. Okay, let's try again. Let's build something beautiful together. Let's choose love, and see what happens when we're both brave enough to fight for it. I crossed the room in 3 steps, and pulled her into my arms, and she felt like coming home, like every good choice I'd ever made rolled into one perfect moment. She smelled like lavender and paint and possibility, and when she wrapped her arms around me, I knew I was finally where I belonged. I love you, I whispered against her hair. I never stopped loving you, not for a single day, not for a single moment. I love you too, she whispered back. Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to forget you existed, I loved you. I never stopped loving you. We held each other in the morning light, surrounded by children's artwork and the promise of second chances, and for the first time in 4 years, I felt complete. Mommy! Mia's voice echoed through the hallway like a battle cry. She burst into the room, took one look at us embracing, and threw her arms around both our legs with the enthusiasm of someone whose deepest wish had just come true. I knew it! I knew you'd choose each other! I told my teacher I had a family emergency, and she let me come here because I said my family needed to become complete. Ava laughed, tears streaming down her face, and knelt down to gather Mia into our embrace. How did you know we needed you right now, little one? Because families stick together, especially during the important parts. And choosing love is the most important part of all. I looked at these two incredible women. One who'd taught me what love looked like, one who'd taught me what courage looked like, and realized I was finally brave enough to deserve them both. So, Ava said, wiping her eyes and grinning through her tears, tell me about these wedding plans. Mia's face lit up like Christmas morning, and the 4th of July rolled into one spectacular celebration. Well, first we need lots of sunflowers because they always turn toward the light, just like how you two always find your way back to each other. And a cake with 3 layers because we're going to be a family of 3. And dancing because that's how people celebrate when they choose love over fear. And you have to promise to love each other forever and ever, even when things get scary. Forever and ever, I agreed, looking into Ava's eyes and seeing my future reflected there. Forever and ever, she echoed. And this time, I knew we both meant it. 6 months later, we stood in the courtyard of the new Riverside Community Arts Center, surrounded by family and friends and the children whose artwork decorated every wall. The building rose around us like a cathedral of creativity, filled with light and possibility, and the promise of dreams made manifest. Mia, in a flower crown she'd insisted on making herself, stood between us as we exchanged vows, her face glowing with the satisfaction of someone whose master plan had come to fruition. I choose you, I said, taking Ava's hands in mine, feeling the paint stains on her fingers like benedictions. Every day, in every way, through every challenge and every joy, I choose you. I choose you too, she replied, her voice strong and sure. And I choose us. All of us. I choose love over fear, hope over regret, forever over the safety of solitude. As we kissed, sealing our second chance with the promise of forever, I heard Mia whisper to her flower girlfriend, "See? Love really is that simple when grown-ups stop making it complicated." And you know what? She was absolutely right. Sometimes the best choice is the one that scares you most. Sometimes love is worth the risk of heartbreak. Sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, you get a second chance to choose courage over fear, hope over regret, love over everything else that seems important, but really isn't. Thank you for joining us on this journey of second chances and choosing love over fear. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us what really matters, and share your own second chance stories in the comments below. Remember, it's never too late to choose love. It's never too late to be brave. It's never too late to fight for the life you really want.